Thank you, President Kathy. Very excited to introduce my good friend, David Hassler, who directs the Wick Poetry Center at Kent State University. He's the author or editor of, this is not a typo, 9 books of poetry and nonfiction, including Growing Season, The Life of a Migrant Community, Speak a Powerful Magic, 10 Years of the Traveling Stanzas Poetry Project, and Red Kimono Yellow Barn, for which he was awarded Ohio Poet of the Year in 2006. His play May 4th Voices, Kent State, 1970 was produced in 2020 as a national radio play by WKSU NPR station. He's going to talk to us about Traveling Stanzas in our community, which is an amazing program, and really looking forward to hearing from him. We do have audio at towards the end, and we've tried to do our best, so we think and we hope that it's going to work, but stand by if it does not.
Thanks, Asid. It's great to be here and to see my former principal, Roger Sidoti, from Roosevelt High School, and most of you I know. So it's great to be here. I'm a townie. I grew up in Kent, and it's been a great passion of mine to find a job where I actually get paid to bring poetry into my own community, the community I grew up in. I wanted to talk about our Traveling Stanzas project, which we started in 2009, initially taking poems from the community and giving them to visual communication design students. Can we proceed to the next? And we've been making these poetry posters and wrapping them around utility boxes in the city of Kent, thanks to David Roller and Jim Bolt, and Jim. And we have kiosks outside the public library. And I want to begin today, though, by reading a poem by an Afghani refugee. Our Traveling Stanzas really took off with a major grant from the Knight Foundation to offer poetry writing workshops in English language learning classes in partnership with the International Institute of Akron back in 2017-18. And given what's in the news and the grief, I think, that many of us feel for the human lives, I want to read a poem by a refugee who made it out of Afghanistan and wrote this poem learning English with flashcards. We had nouns, adjectives, and verbs in English, and he could move them around and learn the definition and practice English by writing very simple poems, following a very simple prompt called My Heart, coming up with images. This is his poem. My heart is a letter. Every time it is sent to someone, they tear the envelope. My heart is a glass. When I am thirsty, the glass is empty with no water. My heart is a phone. When I want to call someone, it doesn't have the charge. My heart is a door. After work, when I come to my house, the door is locked. So Farid Al-Khazai wrote that poem, and we often write about what troubles us. And our poems, actually, by putting the language in front of us, is a way of dealing with that memory, with that trouble that we don't quite have words for or an image for. And by making that image, by making that metaphor, by giving it clarity, it gives us some kind of solace. It gives us some kind of healing, which from Old English, to heal means really to make whole, to integrate, to make it part of our lives. So let's go to the next slide. And then we have a very robust website, travelingstanzas.com. You can go to the next slide. We have many projects partnering with the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, Poets for Science that we took to the National Mall in 2017. We work with the Ohio Nurses Foundation on a new project called Sacred Breath. And many more. Let's go to the next slide. One of our major partners has been Portage Medical Center Foundation with their very generous support. We've been offering writing workshops in the Seidman Cancer Center, in their Addiction Recovery Center, for their nursing staff and caregivers. And I want to read a poem by a gentleman, Dustin, who was in the Recovery Center. And it's called Recovery. And this meant a lot to him at the time, because again, it was a form of healing, kind of making sense of what he's been through versus curing. You know, our creative writing doesn't offer a cure to eradicate a problem, but rather to integrate what's troubling us and what we're dealing with. So this is the poem, Recovery. Recovery is like a caterpillar evolving into a beautiful creature, or like a spider that crawls up a downspout and gets knocked back to the beginning, only to continue upward, refusing to give in. Doors open and a whole new life emerges. From your past, doors close, letting out light from its cracks so it may be remembered. Recovery is not easy. It demands discipline and understanding, continuous attention and reflection, a requirement of hope. Recovery needs hard work and strength, like building a home with brick and mortar mending. Recovery is discovery. You are an explorer, finding yourself in a new land. Recovery is 1 minute, 1 day, 1 week at a time. It works if you work it. Let's go to the next one. This is a poem called My Father's Piano. We've been offering writing workshops with Coleman Options Program with support from UH, Portage Medical Center Foundation. And I love this design. So these are posters designed by Kent State graphic design students. And it's called My Father's Piano. I think of my father, Alzheimer's. He no longer knows me, and I'm lost without him. He plays the piano while his memory is gone. He still reads music. I feel proud. When I was very young, I sat on the piano bench with him, tinkling the treble keys. Those times are gone. We are both grown, older now, but I still have his love. The piano plays on. Next slide. I'm sensitive to your photo shoot, and so I want to show you this poem, Orphan. I'm going to read it because it's such a beautiful poem. Again, another Coleman option patient. My best friend, my mother, like a sail on a boat on the ocean, directing my life to safe harbor. I've had many mothers in many places, being shuffled around like a checker on a checkerboard, not knowing which face I would call mom today. I had many brothers and sisters, all longing for a mother. Black, white, we lived together like a school of fish hovering around each other in the same motion. Beautiful poem. Next slide, another beautiful poem, which I won't read tonight, and then the next. So we are available to do outreach in the community with K through 12 students, with after school programs, veterans. And this summer, Isaiah Hunt, our graduate Wick teaching fellow on the left, led 8 weeks of workshops at the Skeels Matthews Community Center. And we produced a beautiful little chapbook for the kids at the end of the program. And if you go to the next slide, this boy, Trevor Cruz, holding his poster, Trevor Daniels, this is his poem, I Want to Be. He's going into 8th grade in Ravenna. I want to be a sun, bright, shiny, and round. I come for the day and leave for the night. I want to be the window you look out every day. I want to be all the basketball that you used to win the game. I want to be the glasses you wear so you can see your future is clear. I want to be the cup of water to give you a fresh new taste. I want to be the cake that you reward yourself after you win. I want to be your #1 fan when you win or lose. I want to be a spring to spring you on when you are at your lowest. And as his mom at his final celebration came up to me, she said, I didn't know he was a poet. And, he came home excited, he's writing poems. But I think one of the missions of our program is that we all have memories. We all use language to make meaning, to make sense of our lives, and we find a memorable way to shape that language. It becomes a gift, and one that we might share with others. We turn to poetry at a time of crisis. We turn to poetry at a time of celebration. And our next project, if you could go to the next slide, is a way to take traveling stanzas on the road out into communities. We have the great opportunity, we were given the Folk Alley bus from WKSU, and we've been working on retrofitting, taking out the interior and making poetry stations inside the bus. Go to the next slide. We hope to have this operational perhaps in October and have a big event November 1st with the community. But it will be a way to take it to a school, to UH Hospital, to the Skills Matthews Community Center, and kids will be able to walk into the bus and go to different stations and print a postcard of their poem, to move words around on a stanza wall, and to another tool we have, we call the listening wall, where they can play short videos and tap words in the transcript and then move them around like a giant refrigerator magnet kit and print out that poem. So a way to kind of demystify the creative process and make it a form of play, a form of heightened play with language. So let's go to the next slide. Our last project I want to talk with you, partly because it's so timely, is a project that we launched back at the beginning of April with the University of Arizona Poetry Center, called the Global Vaccine Poem Project. And it was a way to help people share how their feelings about the vaccine and the pandemic, and to make meaning of what we've been through in this last year and a half. It's an interactive website. And so if you proceed, we have a short 2-minute video to show you how that website works. But real quickly, we're excited. We just found out that the Poetry Foundation will be a programmatic partner for this project in back to school promotion. We've received nearly 2,200 short poems on the website from 118 countries and every state in the US. So it's been a positive contagion. I mean, it has spread very quickly, and I think offered people a way to kind of release a lot of pent up and unarticulated emotion in their bodies and in their minds. So let's see if the video will work with sound. Oh, we actually had at the field house, we had a pop-up station where people could actually fill out a card and mail it or give it right back. And those entries went onto the website, and College of Nursing students passed out the cards. So we did that for multiple weeks at the field house. Next slide. Okay, let's see, we have audio.
Dear vaccine, on behalf of all vaccinated people everywhere, last night I dropped a line to death, that arbiter of time, that preachy and insatiable realist, and said, step back.
Global Vaccine invites everyone to share our voices and to express what the vaccine means to us and our loved ones. It gives us a chance to pause and reflect on the challenges of this year and to imagine a brighter future. It's easy to participate online or by filling out a card and following one of 4 simple prompts inspired by Young People's Poet Laureate Naomi Shihab Nye's model poem. People can add their voices to our growing community poem every hour, every day.
Dear vaccine, let me close the distance. Let me hold my grandmother's hand and kiss the wrinkles on her knuckles.
We're getting closer to our Sunday gatherings and family cookouts, high fives, stacks, and hugs. With you, dear vaccine, it grows easier by the day. I'm so glad I met you. If not for me, for them.
What we need now is you, your voice joining the ever-expanding global vaccine poem. Help us reach our goal of 1 million responses. As we heal, we know that our way forward is possible together, arm by arm, voice by voice.
So that video was produced with support from the Ohio Arts Council for Governor DeWine's office, and he aired it at one of his press conferences and then tweeted it out. We got some nasty responses and we got some good responses, and we actually have a filter where if somebody submits something that is factually incorrect or intentionally derogatory and defaming, we don't post it. So we are working on a book of a selection of these poems. And hope to have that book come out hopefully in March of 2022. So that would be number 10. I think that if you have questions or comments, I know you have a photo shoot at 12:45, but I just want to say finally that, the work of the Wick Poetry Center is a work of passion and love in this community. A mentor of mine, Maj Reagan, he says, poets are the means by which a place comes to know itself. And I love that quote. And if we think of that, we all have poetry inside of us. We all have that leaping thought. Our voices is a way that we understand who we are. And what is special about Kent, Ohio, what is special about this room right here, so many of you I know. So it's been a great pleasure of mine for my life to raise a family and have this job here in Kent, Ohio. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Are there questions for our wonderful speaker, our poet? Are you the Kent poet? We need to have, who's with the city? We need to have him be our poet in residence, permanent residence. Yes.
How did you become a poet and not some other thing?
Sure.
Okay, Kurt's question is, how did he become a poet, and specifically here locally? Was that kind of it?
Not some other thing.
Yeah. Okay, not some other. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
We have people who are watching, which is why we're.
Oh, I
trying to
see.
make sure-
Okay.
So-
In a way, I tried not to for a lot of years. I grew up in a house filled with books. My father taught for 48 years in the English department at Kent State University, and I was determined not to go into academia and to end up teaching at a university. And I spent my 20s traveling. How did I, doing odd jobs. I lived in Japan teaching English. I lived in France. I graduated from college with a great degree in history, and I kind of had my own reckoning in my 20s of needing to make sense of the world and of my life. I lost my mother when I was 12, and I think really that early death pushed me into needing to find poems or a way to express that grief and to make some beauty and out of it, to make it a source of power. But I didn't know that for many years. So I kind of went through my 20s, kind of pushed by this nagging need to write and trying to write. And then finally, Maggie Anderson, who founded the Wick Poetry Center, was my first poetry teacher. And I had a mentor. I think mentoring one another is actually how things really stick inside of us, because we see, oh, I could do that too. I could be that, I could live my life like that person. So I fortunately, in my mid-20s, met Maggie Anderson and met Mage Reagan. This town is fertile ground for poetry, Brady's Cafe. I just started hanging out with poets. And then I, began to love it. And I got lucky because I got hired. I actually got a job, so that's an oxymoron, an employed poet. I got hired at the age of 30 for the Ohio Arts Council, Poet in the Schools, and that's where I learned all that I brought back to the Wick Poetry Center at the age of 40. So very circuitous route, long answer.
Okay. Your question, Doug.
What do you find is the benefit for the people, kids, older people that write these poems?
What do you find that is the benefit to the children and adults, everybody who's writing these poems? Did I capture that?
Yeah, I mean, anecdotally, over the last 27 years, it's tremendous and it's inexpensive and it's simple and they have ownership of it. They find a voice. And that gives them a sense of power over their own lives, to self-correct, to self-regulate, to feel that they mean something. And there's a beautiful phrase by a theologian. She says, we have the power to hear each other into speech. So what's important is that they write and then they read, and their classmates or their friends hear them and affirm what they feel inside. They are heard into speech or into a better sense of their own being. So we need each other that way. Speaking and listening are not two separate acts, but they're really one act with two consciousnesses, right? It's one activity involving two different consciousnesses. And so I think I've seen students begin to take school, more seriously. They do other things in their lives better because they feel like they have a voice.
Yes, Roger.
David, the poetry that's planted all over our beautiful city, what kind of feedback have you gotten?
What kind of feedback have you gotten from the poetry stanzas around the city?
Wonderful feedback. In fact, people will come up to me and they'll say, David, the audio button is broken at DePeyster in Maine. No, but I mean, I take that as a compliment because they're pushing it. All the audio boxes have all the utility boxes have an audio where you can push a button and hear the child, adult, veteran, refugee read their poem. So we'd love to do more. The city's been very generous, and we just installed 6 on Summit Street a year ago. So hopefully we'll just continue to, I like the word planted, to plant more poems in the soil of our community. Yeah.
Asad.
Assuming we have a few more minutes.
So I don't know if for those of you who are watching, it just started pouring and we're supposed to be having our photograph in 3 minutes. So anyway, we're going to give it a few more minutes of questions. Yes, Asad.
The question is, how can Rotary in particular and the greater community in general help or further the cause or become part of the Poetry Center? So help us out a little bit, those of us that are sitting saying, hey, this is great, I feel a lot of energy, how can I help or what can I do?
Well, that's a great question. You saw that bus. One vision I have is that we actually have a community advisory group. Ralph Kletzian has already volunteered to drive that bus. Or to help when it's, we park it for a week at a school, we park it at a community center. And I would love to train community volunteers, adults, to help facilitate, open the bus up and, again, it's not a scary thing. It's not like you're actually leading a writing workshop, but, I could show you the different fun stations and tools and you would help guide people through. We are going to do a community fundraising campaign for this bus because it in perpetuity programming dollars to drive it and to continue to retrofit new installations inside. Hopefully in October, we'll be launching that. So I think, but I love the idea of, not just, many of you know me because I've knocked on your doors and talked to you about supporting financially our efforts with Traveling Stanzas. But I would love this idea of involving in real practice community members who are interested in participating as well.
Thank you, Joe. He's wondering if there's ever been any thought of collaborating with Kent State's music department.
So we actually did. We've done it a couple times, but we did a project just in it for the 50th commemoration of May 4th. Unfortunately, it all had to go online. It was going to be a beautiful concert in their building of poems of peace and conflict transformation composed. We selected the poems and gave them to Kent State composition students. And they made these incredible compositions that were sung and performed all online. But yeah.
He's got a follow-up. So he's suggesting that we bring that same sort of thing down to Hometown Plaza and have it so the whole community could come and enjoy the combination, the sung poetry. I think that would be great. So, Lee.
David, do you have a favorite poem that's from the pre-20th century?
Favorite poem from pre-20th century?
Not offhand. I mean, I like a lot of them. Yeah.
All right. Well, are there any other questions? I do have a comment. Dave Myers, I believe it was the Wick Poetry Center that Ally went to that workshop. Yes. So my granddaughter, David's daughter, Tom's granddaughter. Anyway, I went to a workshop this summer and it was a camp, I guess, for about a week. Yeah. And it was wonderful. So we were over at dinner and she was reciting some poems after the conclusion of it. So it was fabulous. And as another aside, since our photographer's waiting and I'm waiting for it to stop raining, I have witnessed some of the workshops that you've done at Coleman for our options program. And it truly is fascinating to see the cues that the instructor is giving the students who happen to be our clients. And the poems that they've come up with have just been really remarkable. I mean, you read 2 of them, but there are many more poems, and it makes me want to do a poetry workshop, not because I aspire to be a great poet, but I think that the tools that you learn and they're just little prompts. So it was really fascinating. And I felt very honored to be able to be a witness to that. So as one of our routines, one of our traditions here at Kent Rotary is to have a responder. And today our responder is David McKean.
So we've had speakers before talking about some of the more scientific things that happen at Kent State. And one of the great things about being in a college town is the arts and culture that it brings. And it's great to hear the things that the Poetry Center is doing to bring the community closer together, to help people with their healing. So thank you very much for coming today and sharing that with us.
Right, we're gonna have our four-way test and then I'm gonna do a quick check with the photographer who's outside and see what his vision is and if we have a backup here. Of the things that we think, say, and do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you very much, and just stay seated for a sec.